Do severe avoidants ever feel guilt? Do they ever feel remorse for the pain they cause people in relationships? Well, the answer is yes and no. Some do, some don't. Let's start with the ones that do. The ones that do initially feel a sense of relief after they discarded a partner. The partner they discarded is in a world of pain. They were blindsided. They didn't see it coming. The rug was pulled from under their feet, and it's the most crushing kind of breakup there is because it's abrupt and no answers are given, and possibly they're even ghosted. This is because the avoidant has deactivated. Understand the root word of avoidant is avoid. They've learned to handle and cope with emotional and relationship stress by not handling it, by taking things and running from them. Problems suppressed, feelings buried. They don't process emotions. That's what they've learned to do. That's how they've learned to cope. This is the result of being emotionally neglected as children. They've learned to run from their feelings. They've learned to run from their problems. And they've also learned to associate emotional intimacy with abandonment. If you get close to somebody, if you let them behind the castle wall, they're going to reject and abandon you. That's why the avoidant runs for the hills out of nowhere as the relationship is getting closer and emotional intimacy is building. This can absolutely devastate the person that gets discarded by them. Now, initially, after the discard, the avoidant is feeling a huge sense of relief, enormous relief, because they're no longer being pressured to be emotionally available for you in a relationship. But if no contact is used, the avoidant starts to feel safe. And this is because you're not pressuring them, you're not pursuing them, you're not trying to get them back into a relationship. Now, they've taken those feelings for you and they've buried them deep. They're very, very deeply buried when they discard you. They're not allowing themselves to access their own feelings. But as they begin to feel safe, they allow themselves to slowly start accessing those feelings again. That's when they can get overwhelmed with an enormous sense of guilt and shame and remorse. And shame is a toxic emotion. But when these emotions are now accessible to them, there's a couple different things that can happen. One, they can desperately try to get back together with you. Or number two, they seek toxic, maladaptive behaviors to try and numb and suppress the pain. But they are in a world of hurt when they allow themselves to access those feelings because it confirms to them their worst fears that they are bad people. Keep in mind, they already have a very low sense of self-worth. They already have a low self-esteem. And they just confirmed to themselves that they are bad people. Now, those are the ones that actually allow themselves to feel guilt, to feel remorse. But there's a portion of avoidance that never let that happen. Those are the ones that monkey branch. Monkey branching is serial dating. Like a monkey swinging through the trees, not letting go of the previous branch until they have a new one in hand. Always being in a relationship. Avoidants that do this do it for a couple different reasons. One, it distracts them. It helps them avoid processing any painful emotions that they don't want to process. So the emotions from the previous breakup, they don't have to process them. They can keep those suppressed because they're distracted by the new relationship. That dopamine is flowing with the new relationship. That oxytocin, the feel-good hormones that are going off in the brain are making them feel great, helping them avoid ever having to process the pain. These avoidants never get to the point where they allow themselves to feel the guilt, the remorse for hurting people. They just don't allow it. They keep those emotions buried, and every time they discard a partner, they already have a new one in hand, which keeps them from having to feel pain. It keeps them feeling good. It helps them avoid the problems that they don't want to face. And this can be very painful to see. You just got blindsided by this person, and they're already in a new relationship, and they seem like everything is great and their world is just wonderful. And meanwhile, you're licking your wounds, trying to put back together the pieces of your shattered heart. But understand, that's a reflection of them. That is not a reflection of you. That's a reflection of their insecurities. That's a reflection of their low self-esteem and their inability to process and handle emotions. The avoidants that do feel guilt still try to avoid it for as long as they can. It can take them months or even years to get to the point where they allow themselves to re-access their feelings for you and feel that guilt and feel that remorse. The ones that monkey branch can continue to do so their entire lives. These cycles, the cycles of discarding and hurting people and seeking validation in unhealthy ways, these cycles can continue the entire life of the avoidant until they stop it, until they get to the point where they are actually willing to do the work that's required to heal, to turn those eyeballs inward, to actually do some self-reflection and take ownership of their behaviors and ownership of their attachment style and actually work towards healing those core attachment wounds. And this also should involve therapy with a licensed psychotherapist. They can do it, they can heal, but it's a very difficult process for them, not because it's complicated, because it requires enormous willpower. Now, understand, being discarded by an avoidant, it is one of the most painful breakups there is, because you are given little to no explanation as to why you were just thrown out like it didn't matter. And this is because this person doesn't self-reflect. They bury their emotions. If you bury your emotions and you don't reflect on them, how can you possibly articulate them to the person that you're discarding? You can't. That's why you're given vague answers. And understand the same reason is why they often don't feel the pain or guilt, or at least don't feel it for a very long time. They've taken the feelings and buried them because that's their way of coping with problems, is to just not face it, to dodge it, to avoid it. That's why they're called avoidants. Problems in life, emotional and relationship stress, they avoid the problems rather than facing it.